When the HOA president marched up my driveway holding a clipboard like a weapon, I had no idea my quiet garden would spark. The most satisfying neighborhood. Showdown of my life. She squinted at my tomatoes as if they were contraband, sighed dramatically, and declared my yard an eyesore. That was the moment I realized this wasn't just about flowers. It was about control, pride, and who really belonged on this street. And if you stay until the end, you'll see how the entire neighborhood flipped the script in a way none of us expected. I moved into the cul-de-sac for peace. I wanted soil under my nails, not drama. My garden started small. Raised beds, sunflowers, a few berry bushes. Neighbors waved, kids stopped to watch bees, and for a while it felt like community. Then Keran became HOA president. Overnight, rule enforcement turned theatrical. Grass height measured, paint shades scrutinized. My garden, once ignored, suddenly violated vague aesthetic standards. Keran's letters piled up, each more passive-aggressive than the last. She complained about compost bins, wooden trellises, even the scarecrow my niece made. I tried being polite. I cited bylaws. I offered tours. Nothing worked. She wanted conformity, not conversation. The tension seeped into every morning as I watered plants under her watchful glare. The breaking point came at the monthly HOA meeting. Keran projected photos of my yard on a screen like evidence in court. She spoke about property values while I sat there, stunned, watching neighbors exchange confused looks. When she finished, silence hung heavy. Then Mrs. Alvarez raised her hand and asked why a garden was worse than unused lawns. Others chimed in. Questions turned into stories about pollinators, fresh vegetables, and kids learning where food comes from. For the first time, Keran looked uncertain. I realized then this wasn't my fight alone. It was about what kind of neighborhood we wanted to be. As the meeting ended, a few neighbors stopped me, whispering support, smiling like co-conspirators. I walked home past my garden, heart pounding, sensing something bigger had just begun, something that would change everything by season's end. That night I couldn't sleep. I replayed the meeting, the faces, the shift in the room. The garden outside rustled in the breeze, alive and stubborn. I understood Keran would escalate, but I also felt a spark of resolve. If she wanted a battle over dirt and dignity, I would answer with patience, facts, and a garden so undeniable it would force everyone to choose a side. I didn't know how yet, but I sensed the soil itself was already working in my favor. Change was coming, rooted deep, growing quietly, unstoppable, waiting for sunlight. Keran escalated exactly as I predicted. Within a week, orange violation tags sprouted on my fence like weeds. She cited unauthorized structures, agricultural use, and my favorite, excessive joy. I took photos, logged dates, and kept gardening. If she wanted paper battles, I'd bring receipts, patience, and tomatoes. What Keran didn't realize was how visible her crusade had become. Neighbors walking dogs stopped to read the tags. Kids asked why someone hated vegetables. Mrs. Alvarez posted a picture of my sunflowers online with the caption, "Apparently illegal happiness." Comments poured in. Laughter did what arguments never could. Then Keran tried fines. Letters arrived, stamped urgent, threatening daily penalties. I requested formal hearings, forcing everything onto record. Each meeting, I calmly presented bylaws allowing gardens, composting, and decorative natural features. Keran interrupted, sighed, and rolled her eyes. The board members shifted uncomfortably, clearly tired of her theatrics. Meanwhile, the garden exploded with life. Vines climbed trellises, bees hummed. I added a small sign explaining native plants and pollinators. People lingered. Someone brought their grandmother to see the herbs. Another neighbor asked for cuttings. The yard became a gathering point, not an eyesore. Keran's frustration peaked when the city announced its annual Best Yard of the Year nominations. I hadn't even known the program existed. A volunteer stopped by, clipboard in hand, smiling as she admired the beds. Keran watched from across the street, arms crossed, jaw tight. The irony was delicious. The HOA meeting before nominations closed was tense. Keran warned everyone about sending the wrong message. I simply thanked neighbors for their kindness and said gardens grow best with community support. Applause followed, spontaneous and loud. Keran called for order, but the moment had slipped beyond her control. Afterward, someone whispered that nearly the entire street had nominated my yard. I walked home under twilight, stunned. This wasn't about winning anything. It was about being seen. The soil, the work, the stubborn refusal to shrink had connected people who barely spoke before. That night, I watered quietly, moonlight glinting off leaves. I thought about how fear thrives in silence, and how sunlight changes everything. Keran had tried to shame me into compliance. Instead, she had fertilized something stronger. The garden stood, rooted and radiant, waiting for judgment not from one clipboard, but from the whole neighborhood. Results wouldn't arrive for weeks, but momentum already felt irreversible. Keran avoided eye contact now, sensing numbers turning against her. I focused on upkeep, trimming edges, labeling plants, staying impeccably compliant. The garden had become proof, not protest. Every leaf felt like a vote, every smile a ballot. The season still held surprises. Trust me, the fallout would be louder than any fine and far more satisfying, too. The nomination results arrived on a Thursday, tucked into my mailbox like an afterthought, but the envelope felt heavier than paper. I stood there reading while Keran's curtains twitched across the street. The city had shortlisted my garden. Not won yet, just shortlisted. Still, the reaction was immediate. Neighbors clapped when they saw me. Someone rang a cowbell. The street buzzed like harvest time. Keran responded with urgency. She scheduled an emergency HOA inspection, citing community concerns. 3 board members showed up, clipboards ready. I walked them through every bed, explaining spacing, drainage, and maintenance. I handed over printed bylaws with highlighted sections. They nodded, asked questions, and complimented the labeling. Keran hovered, correcting no one, scribbling furiously. The inspection ended without violations. Keran announced she would review findings. Translation, she was losing. That weekend, more neighbors stopped by than ever. Kids helped pick beans. A retired couple donated mulch. Someone painted a tiny sign, "Vote Garden." It felt like a block party disguised as yard work. City judges visited on Monday. They asked about water use, native species, and community impact. I answered honestly. I talked about learning curves, mistakes, and sharing harvests. Keran watched from her porch, arms folded, forced smile glued tight. When the judges left, she marched over and warned me not to get ahead of myself. I thanked her for stopping by. The announcement came at the annual neighborhood picnic. A microphone squealed. The mayor read the citation. "Best yard of the year," applause erupted. I felt dizzy. Keran froze, expression unreadable. A banner went up. Photos snapped. Someone handed me a certificate and a gift card to a local nursery. I thought about the compost pile that started it all. Later, Keran resigned as HOA president. Officially, it was personal reasons. Unofficially, the board wanted peace. New leadership rewrote guidelines, clarifying garden protections. They invited residents to plant days and workshops. The street looked different by fall. Lawns softened into beds. Color replaced conformity. That evening, I stood alone in the garden, certificate tucked away. Winning wasn't the point. Being rooted was. Keran had tried to erase something living. Instead, she'd taught us how to defend it together. The garden glowed under string lights. Proof that growth once supported becomes unstoppable. As neighbors lingered, we shared stories about why we moved here and what we wanted our kids to remember. The garden became a classroom, a commons, a quiet promise. I realized victories don't always look like trophies. Sometimes they look like soil shared and rules rewritten. And while Keran disappeared into silence, the rest of us learned how standing firm can gently, persistently, change the ground beneath everyone's feet. Change arrived slowly, then all at once, and stayed, for good measure. The season turned, and with it came quiet consequences Keran never expected. After her resignation, she withdrew, curtains closed, yard immaculate, but empty. The rest of us kept planting. What started as my stubborn patch of soil became a movement. The city asked me to speak at a sustainability fair, and neighbors volunteered to help. We built raised beds for seniors, swapped seeds, and taught kids how to compost. The HOA didn't just allow it, they celebrated it. One afternoon, Karen appeared unexpectedly at the edge of my garden. She looked smaller, less armored. She said she never hated gardens, only disorder. I listened. I told her order can grow too if you let it breathe. She nodded, eyes on the soil, then left without another word. The award faded into memory, but the impact didn't. Property values rose. So did trust. The street hosted potlucks, not hearings. Kids rode bikes between beds, learning names of plants instead of rules. When new residents moved in, the first thing they noticed wasn't uniformity, but care. I still garden every morning. I still pull weeds, still lose plants, still learn. The difference is I'm not alone. What Karen called an eyesore became a mirror, reflecting who we chose to be. Power tried to flatten something living and failed. Community chose roots over rules. Sometimes people ask if I'm glad Karen pushed so hard. I think about that first letter, the fear it carried. Then I look at the garden, at neighbors laughing, at soil shared freely. Pressure reveals what matters. Without her, we might have stayed quiet. Instead, we grew louder, kinder, together. This story isn't about winning against someone. It's about choosing growth when shrinking is easier. It's about showing up, season after season, and trusting that care compounds. Long after titles fade, what remains is the ground we tend and the people we tend it with. That's the real yard of the year every year. As autumn deepened, leaves layered the beds, and we planned winter crops together. Garlic cloves pressed into cold soil, promises sleeping underground. I realized the fight had never been about authority, but about fear of change. Once faced, it loosened its grip. The neighborhood learned that beauty isn't uniform. It's intentional. As lights flickered on at dusk, the garden rested. Ready to rise again come spring, stronger for everything it survived. I locked the gate, smiled, and knew this place would keep growing. With or without permission, because it belonged to all of us now. Rooted in shared effort, watered by courage, and protected by voices finally unafraid to speak. Plant and stand together, season after season, quietly proving that care outlasts control. And growth always finds a way, especially when nurtured. Enjoying this neighborhood garden showdown and how it all unfolded? Hit subscribe to follow more real-life stories where everyday people stand their ground and come out stronger. Give the video a like if you believe community should matter more than control, and drop a comment below. Would you have handled the HOA any differently or planted even more just to prove a point?